What happens when a guy from the city accidentally contacts a guy from the country? It's not what you think. They strike up a conversation and same difference is created. JD and Kory talk the whole gamut of life as they each see it through the prism of race. One is a 6'4" black man and one is a 5'4" white man. Tune in and find out which is which. Agree or disagree, they will make you think, strike emotional chords, and more. Stick around. You might just learn something. Welcome to Same Difference with your hosts, JD and Kory. We're sharing our stories and how our stories impacted our approach to life. We take our perspectives into having dialogue about real life topics. Good to see you, JD. It is wonderful to be back.
It's great to see you as well. Welcome to another episode of Same Difference Podcast, brought to you by Kory May from Iowa City, Iowa, and JD Mass from the last time I'm in my Florida location.
And where are you going to, JD?
I am going to St. Louis, specifically U City.
You're representing here, my friend.
Yes, sir.
Let's get to a couple of shout outs beforehand. Again, we got to thank our fine people at VPR Radio, the Goddess, Kiana, and DJ FMI.
Absolutely. We continue to appreciate the ability to give us the platform and kind of guide us through this podcasting journey.
So, JD, you are in Florida getting ready to move back home.
Right.
And we've talked about representation and we've done some conversations a little bit about some diversity, some diversity. The catchphrase now is diversity, equity, inclusion, and there's a third or fourth one coming out now, belonging, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. What do you think about
keep adding letters to all these little letter groups, but go ahead.
It was defined to me that DEI was being invited to the dance. Belonging is that someone asks you to dance and you feel like you belong. I think that's relevant for us to talk about today. What do you think?
I do. I love George Carlin's bit on how we use language. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but if you haven't, I really strongly recommend you, the listeners, whoever, to just even YouTube search it. There's clips of just that, or you can see his whole stand-up bit that includes it. But we love to play around with our words, and I know you're a wordsmith, and I am not. I would, tease my dad that you have to tell me words that are 6 letters or less, and I just can't comprehend. Because he would say some elaborate word that he got from his Ivy League education and background, and I would say, I don't know what that means. And then he would tell me a definition that included 3 more words that had long, and I would say, I don't know what those mean, so you're not helping me. And then he would say something in a very lay 5th grader terminology, and I go, oh, see, why couldn't we just say that? So I say all that to say, belonging is definitely important, and all that, diversity means more than just, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever. It means a diversity of thought and an ability, and equity has its own meaning, and it's a powerful meaning of, being able to control resources, being able to make decisions, and being included at a certain level, and inclusion. And I can see the difference between belonging. My favorite word out of all of these is welcoming. To me, what I felt in Black community when I was growing up was a very welcoming feeling. I could come in, I could be myself, and I could be a part of it. And that's the strongest word in all of this. And maybe, we'll set a trend and they'll add a fifth letter, and people will be pissed at me for bringing in another letter to the whole mix. But welcoming was like the most important. Um, you've explained to me belonging in a way I would love for you to explain to the listeners from the dance perspective, right? The difference between inclusion and belonging.
Yeah, well, so again, inclusion means you've gotten invited. Belonging means that somebody's asked you to dance, which means that there's much like your definition, it's welcoming. You're at least feeling someone saying, "Hey, I see you and you have value, and whatever you bring to the table is worth at least my time and attention to be associated with you or affiliated with you."
Right.
And that way you just feel a little bit more comfortable, and I think we start to represent more like ourselves. And in terms of workplaces, I think, or any place that we go, bringing our actual selves is far more beneficial than bringing a partial being. Like
Right.
3/5, and no apologies made about 3/5. 3/5 of me is not all of me. 3/5 of
Right.
me is only, it's a little bit more than my majority, but there's elements of myself that are missing. And for those of you who are listening, I did use 3/5 on purpose. And if I can't bring all of myself to work, then I don't have as much stake in my workplace or my job or my ability to be who I am, right? That's not to
And
say, go
go ahead.
ahead.
No, go ahead.
The being able to bring all of myself means that all of my resources are focused and I feel welcome enough to say, much like part of diversity is having a contrary opinion. If I can't bring that contrary opinion sometimes, in terms of we haven't considered this aspect. And from my life experience, if we do this, if we embark on this course, guess what? We're going to have these results. And if no one else has similar life experience, and you ignore that, it becomes problematic.
And
That's
that's what I was going to get into. The on the flip side, it's easy for us because our power to define, um, and I go back to what Ben Ami taught me in his book, um, was that the during the civil rights period, um, the power to define was that freedom for Black folks meant to really assimilate into the culture that was existing. It was not to go and be free to be yourself, to explore your own cultures, to dress how you want to, right? So there was that level of maybe diversity, as you're saying, but missing the inclusive and truly being able to be yourself in the belonging of it and welcoming. I go back to that word. And it's hard to know because we're so not taught about other cultures. And, we're just kind of taught that the way things are due to human nature, it's it's that you're in a system, right? It's hard for the fish to know that they're swimming in water. I don't really think about every day. I try to think about it that I'm also walking through an air, right? Like there's an energy around us. But if we don't really talk to pay attention to that, it's really challenging at workspaces to for us as white folks often when we've created a space to know how to uh, welcome somebody and include them in if they don't fit into our way of of operating, if they don't assimilate into our culture. And that's not to say we're bad people because of it. There's maybe some bad people up above that are setting the tone for this in the way we get educated, but there's just, this has been the cultural practice. And so these are some of the things that in our podcast and our work and in the work that we do, I've been in very, seems like down south white folks can tend to be a little more welcoming than some others, even though they would love to be in other settings, because there's a little more upfrontness about how people feel here. But anyway, maybe that's just my experience. But yeah, I agree, that sense of belonging, of being able to be whole and present in a setting is very important.
Well,
So
we've seen
go
this a
ahead.
couple of times. Like in a previous episode, you talked about Hidden Figures and Taraji B. Henson's um, comments about how she has to go to the bathroom a quarter mile away, and all of this. There's a colored bathroom. She can't be herself
Right.
because the system has defined who she is and
Hmm.
where she can practice her bodily functions.
Right.
And the situation is set up so that it's not welcoming. It's not, everybody evacuates their bowels, right?
Right.
Why does that have to be segregated?
Yeah.
and
So
and here we are dealing with this issue, and writ large again, that example, she has to explain. Kevin Costner, Kevin Costner's figure, character in this is not aware of it. Or if he is aware of it, he just takes it as normal. The fish being not being aware that they're in water.
mhm. And so, Kory, do you have an experience from growing up, and even one more recently, that you can expound upon, so that share with us, like, our mission is to use the storytelling. Do you have some examples of when you went through some of these things? And I would hope that you even found example or have an example of when it was worked through, because that's an important part. It's not just to leave our listeners with a sort of taste in their mouth, but also to see the experience of working through something.
Well, there's several with regard to belonging, right? For those of you who don't know me and haven't seen the pictures yet, I'm the black guy. And because of the way I talk, I often get mistaken for being white. There was a time when I was doing phone reception duty, and someone was railing about affirmative action taking jobs from white people.
Hmm.
And they said, "Well, don't you agree with me?" And I said, "Ma'am, I don't." And she said, "Well, aren't you white like me?" And I said, "As a matter of fact, I'm not." And she said, "Well, how black are you?" And phone etiquette prevented me from
Saying,
being
"Oh, hell no." Go
right.
ahead.
I was in a position where I could not do that because it would
Right.
reflect negatively on my employer. That is part of belonging, is recognizing that there are people who are different from you who are very similar to you, and it's the assumption that everyone who sounds like me is just like me. We can take it another step further. Again, now this is a face-to-face conversation about belonging. They heard me speak and they said, well, obviously you've had some education. Now, would any white person say that to another white person?
No, that would probably be assumed that that would be the case.
Exactly. And then they asked, well, where are you from? And I said, Iowa City. No, I mean, really, where are you from? You're not from Chicago or down south or St. Louis? No, I'm from Iowa City. I mean, no, really, where did you grow up? I was born and raised here in Iowa City. And the shock on this individual's face was like, that was completely unbelievable.
How do we let you in here?
Yeah, there was a little bit of intellectual gatekeeping there and checking my credentials. And I'm scratching my head going, is it in the 21st century, is it so unbelievable to think that there aren't Black people almost everywhere in almost every state of the Union?
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you might run into a native born, it shouldn't be frightening in any way, shape, or form. Now, admittedly, I'll give him this. Iowa is 97% white, but it shouldn't have been a complete and utter shock that he met a Black native Iowan. Where it fits in, where you fit in, is when people of diverse castes bringing their authentic self have conversations and you realize that I can get more productivity, more understanding, more life experience, more vision from someone who's different from me than if everybody looks just like me. Because your life experience, I mean, even bringing in age, bringing in, because I'm a Gen Xer, I'm not a boomer. Bringing Gen X experience to the workplace is provides different insight. Bringing my culture with me provides different insight. This might be, we probably shouldn't phrase it like that. We might want to phrase it like this. Instead of in an outgoing letter using the term those people, we might need to be a little bit more sensitive. Or even having the idea of being able to make a statement on something like Black Lives Matter. We support this. And because the silence is deafening, whenever we're bringing our authentic selves together, then all of a sudden we set up a place where everybody feels safe enough to share that dissenting opinion with compassion. It's not the idea that those people are bad and we can't do anything with them. It's, here's why I don't think this is a good move.
Right.
Here's why we should do this, because it'll have this effect. And this is how we should state it, because we're doing the right thing here. And if we don't bring those sorts of visions forward, we don't bridge divides.
Mm-hmm.
I can have a legitimate conversation with someone if the workplace, if we're able to bring ourselves into the workplace and at the same time respect each other, all of a sudden we can have more difficult conversations because I know this is a human being. And because I know this is a human being, I am more inclined to get and give respect.
So I think one of the challenges with this, and we're going to go off our normal practice here, but this is a good topic to do so, is that how each and every one of us give and show love, respect, and whatnot. It's very different. I my my background with my friends is we call each other names
Oh,
as greetings, right? Right? Like you call somebody up and be like, "What's up, punk motherfucker?" And like we started our conversation, man, what your bitch ass doing? And
mhm.
like, we would literally begin our conversations that way. Um, but in doing so, like we were all inclusive and belonging in that way of doing it. I can remember when and you know, my nickname in the crew often was Jew Boy. And you know, I know we can't say that now, and that is horrible to say, especially during these exact times. But it was, I was, you know, like you know, my friends would talk about each other's level of darkness or whatever. You know? Like there was just a level of nothing was off limits, and because of that, we could be our authentic selves. And I
Right.
remember a teacher hearing Nellie as we were leaving out the school one day yell, "Jew boy, wait up!" And she was like, "How dare you say such a thing?" As a black woman, and she just wanted to make sure she was, you know, making sure that this little white guy was not being harmed.
Mhm.
And I had to explain to her, you know, no, I'm okay with that. I'm comfortable. Why would you be comfortable with that? Because we're just talking stuff and we're just having fun and we're just including each other. And I
Right.
had to explain at one point that, you know, they talk about each other's, and she didn't feel that that was right. But I
Right.
also feel like that wasn't right for her. It was okay for us. We weren't
Right.
causing harm. He wasn't saying I was belittled because of my Jewishness. We don't call our darkest friend, you know, out because of because that has a negative connotation. In society, it has. So context matters in belonging and all of these things. This is a
Yes.
nuanced thing that we're discussing, right?
Exactly. Yes.
I have two other experiences where a white woman, elderly white woman, my mom's, almost my mom's mother's age, but my mom and her became very close. My first time meeting her, we went to pick her up and I was driving. So my friends and I would smack each other in the back of the head. Drive, go. And whatever descriptive words, whether it was Jew boy or blackie or whatever kind of, like whatever they would say, whatever, yo, drive your tall ass, drive your skinny ass, drive your, and we would do that to get started. Like that was the key that it's time to start the motor and go, right? Everybody was settled in their seat. So my mom's friend, elderly white woman, Dinah, loved Dinah to life, even though she's passed on, RIP. She got in the car, never met me before, smacked me in the back of the head and said, "Where are we going to dinner?" I immediately felt love and connection with Dinah, right? Like that was comforting to me. I'm not saying it would be comforting to everybody.
Right.
So there was that. And then I have a new business partner named John. And John, I was brought in at our old position to, and John grew up taught not to be racist, as he explained to me several times in context, but also grew up in near the Bronx or Brooklyn. I can't remember, one of the B words, up in New York. And and he was taught by his friends to talk trash to each other.
Oh yeah.
So he and I bond right now over making fun of each other,
Right.
talking trash, and we do it in meetings, right? Like, but people can see the love between us and that there is actual mutual respect when we do so. I would never call on John to do that. JD never handles that. But, like, but we would just, right? But that level of connection gave us from our past belonging scenario that way. And I'm going to leave this with the third selection. The other day when I was visiting St. Louis, I went out with Mike, who I've been best friends with since I was 4, his wife Satrice, and Satrice's best friend, who all of us went to elementary school together on through high school. So we know each other very well. And Mike and I sat at the table, and I don't even recall us making fun of each other. And Satrice's friend Tiffany said, Michael, he called me up the next day. He said, man, she was getting on me like you made him feel bad. And I was like, he did. I don't even remember what we said that was that bad. Like, what were we doing? And that's just because, like, that is how we spoke to each other. So it doesn't have to be defined by everybody the same way. And that's part of the challenge and the beauty too of being diverse and just being curious and experiencing people for who they are.
So let me ask you, if somebody else jumped in on one of your people ranking, is it knuckle up time? It's like you can't talk to him like that.
If it's funny, it's funny. So first and foremost, no. But like, yeah, there's definitely there's always a level of, you and I could get into an argument that somebody else can't just come and argue with you about the same way,
Right.
and be okay with that. Me and, from a U City standpoint, we used to talk about this all the time. We may fight. Let somebody from Normandy come try to jump into the fight. We're jumping them, right? So this would be the um, so yes, there's always that level of comfort, right? Like I express my anger towards certain situations and groups of people with my father, and he goes, you can't say that out in the public. And I go, I'm not. I'm saying that to you, so I don't say it out in the public, right? So there's always, as we get more and more comfortable with each other, as we get more and more inclusive, I have to catch myself sometimes making jokes around newer groups of people
Right.
that I would be comfortable with around my folks, going, oh yeah, these black folks don't know me. They just see a white dude.
Right. 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 Right.
And so I have to, but that's the context of the situation. So context is important in belonging. I agree with you though. Like, so much of it has to do with how much of it are you allowed to be your true self. And
Right.
that's why this idea of cancel culture becomes dangerous, even if the intentions are that we have this loving, peaceful place. Don't define how love and peace are expressed,
Oh
because it's
man.
different for you.
Man, you created another topic for another episode because we should get into cancel culture at some point, and I think it
Oh yeah,
deserves
without a
a
doubt.
whole 60 minutes to talk about that. So my my experience with comfort mirrors yours, right? So if I'm comfortable, my one of my best roommates from college, we'll get on the phone and we'll bust on each other, just ranking on each other. And his wife and the woman that I was dating at a time were like, "Oh my gosh, you two hate each other." I'm like, "Oh no, 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 no. This is all love." This is
Right.
all love. We gonna talk about each other, and and it's like it's first cousins to playing the dozens, right?
Hmm.
So for those of you who aren't familiar with that, it's insulting back and forth, creating closeness, right?
Right.
And when we talk about elevating that to your mama jokes, it's not JD's actual mom. It's not Kory's actual mom. It's this
Right.
mythical mom figure. It's
Right.
not, and it's not personally, because when I meet JD's mom, I'm gonna address her as Miss whatever her first name is, or Mrs. and Mrs. Mass, and
Hmm.
that's how it's gonna be. She
Right.
may give me permission to call her by her first name, but I'm not ready to call her that. I am not ready to assume the familiarity just yet.
Yeah.
And so if JD meets my mother, Miss Sadie, then JD is going to refer to her as Miss Sadie or ma'am,
Right.
Mrs. May,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, man.
And we know that. Now, if we start talking about each other, cracking on each other, it's not our actual moms. It's a mythical mom, just it's not about tearing our actual birth mothers down at all. It's just a way that we're growing closer to each other without it's fighting without fighting. It's playing chess without the pieces. It's who can come up with the best one liner, proving in that situation who's better. And sometimes you just keep coming back and forth. You go back and forth with each other. And to watch it is one thing. You can be a witness to it and you can have your own feelings. And if you're not comfortable with it, that's a thing. My daughter-in-law, my son's wife, hears me and my son go back and forth with each other, just joning on each other. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, you two are so mean to each other." No, it's a sign of affection. That's all. That's all that is. If somebody
Right.
else does it, if somebody else does it, I'm like, "Hey, you can't talk about my son that way.
Right.
You cannot
Right.
talk about my son that way." And same thing with my ex-college roommate, Ron. I'm like, we'll talk about each other. And then somebody else jumps in. We're like, who, who are you?
The spirit of how you do it, though, right?
Right.
Like, so we can also learn to make fun of what other people have a problem with us about, whether they blame us or whatever for certain things. But the actual blame is still, there's a level of harm when you're not taking responsibility for things or whatever. But to be able to joke about that also, just it can be healing. So yeah, it's not as black and white. Um, it's not as, simple in this. The ideas are simple, the executions are complex because we're complex beings,
Right.
and context plays such a role.
Now, there's a favorite word among the brothers and the sisters, motherfucker.
Yeah, motherfucker. Don't be afraid of the word motherfucker.
And for those of you who haven't seen Bernie Mac's segment on that, dig it out on YouTube, and it is funny.
And
And again, it
fabulous.
comes back to context. JD, talk about it.
It's fabulous, and it one it's I use it in some of my work because he talks about how black folks use aggressive language. Talk, I'm gonna come blow this motherfucker up. He starts, with that as the opening to the segment. He was like, but really, who you known black to blow something up, right? We talk loud. It's an aggressive. It's our kind of even sometimes a fear thing or whatnot. Just overcoming. We got to be this feeling of aggressiveness, but it's just words and expression, and so it's being allowed to just be expressive. Feelings don't have to make logical sense.
Right,
They don't
right.
have to come out that way. Um, and so they often can even sound worse or more harmful than, when expressed in a response to fear or whatever. So he explained that pretty well. And then he started talking about, white folks. If you hear black folks standing around talking, you might hear motherfucker dropped 150 times and a few words sparsed in between it, but the shit makes sense. And I'm gonna leave it at that because I want you guys to go watch that. I watch it regularly just for my own enjoyment and to recenter me at times. But yes.
It's what we're also talking about in terms of belonging. And this is not to suggest that black culture is all coarse and crass. It is not. It is not.
Mm-mm.
No more than all white culture is high and elevated or anything like that. There's coarseness wherever, right? So what you're also hearing us as we speak, we're flipping back and forth, we're code switching. We're talking in the language appropriate to the circumstance and the location at the same time, though, and we can go back and forth. Some people say, oh, you're talking ebonics. It's African American vernacular English. If we want to dig into that, that's another episode too. It mirrors language rules of another prominent language, but we'll get to that. When we use it, it's not, again, it all comes back down to context. If JD cracks on me really well, if he's got a one-liner on me that tears me up and I don't have anything to say, I might say, motherfucker. This motherfucker right here just busted my ass. Oh, hell no. And what I'm doing is I'm buying time so that I can come back with something on him.
Right.
and it's if we're angry, it's a pressure valve that lets words come out, relieves pressure, relieves stress. It is not necessarily an indicator of incipient violence, not necessarily. It might just be the pressure valve that allows us to say what we need to say and get it off our chest.
Needs to be released.
Right. Now, after you watch George, this is your homework. You've got George Carlin from JD, and you've got Bernie Mac from me. Understand also that there are two comedians here who are talking clearly, and it's in these moments that we recognize that comedy can provide a far clearer lens to what's going on than a politician or an industry mogul saying this is what's happening.
Yeah.
This is such fertile, and I mean such fertile ground in terms of conversation. If I don't know JD well and he calls me motherfucker, I'm like, who the hell is he? I don't know him. I'm gonna be this little motherfucker calling me motherfucker. Oh, hell no. And you're looking for, in that moment, you're looking for anybody who can give him credentials, anybody who can give him a pass that says he's cool, he's down, he's with us.
Mm-hmm.
Because automatically we're jumping to the conclusion that I'm going to look at JD like, this white guy just called me motherfucker for no reason. What's this about? And now, if he has people, if he's got a homeboy that knows me or one of his homeboys, and they step in and say, hey, he's cool, he's down, I'm gonna be like, oh, so Junior wants to box now. Junior wants to Joan. All right, come on, step into the ring with the grown-ups, get away from the
Mhm.
kiddie table. And now everybody knows we're sparring. This isn't going to be violent. This isn't going to be anything other than us testing each other to see, are we going to be close or are we just going to be acquaintances?
Right.
And if we find out, like, I was like, man, after we've gone back and forth for a little while, we realize that we cool. There's the whole process of dapping, handshakes, whatever. We cool. After we're off of out of the arena, if you will, now we're gonna sit over here and talk. We might go grab a bite to eat, and we figure out from there: are we going to continue this relationship and get closer, or are we down? And I recognize you, and if I see you at the mall or someplace, I'm gonna give you the head nod.
And I think it's also important to just know that all we're discussing is a way that we get closer. It's not the way, it's a way.
Right.
And um, you know, how we work through all of this is what's going to make belonging and inclusiveness and welcoming and equity and all of those things really matter and exist and have some substance to them.
Right.
And it's just one way. It's just learning the different cultures. There's, and amongst different races, there's different cultures amongst us. There's, highfalutin folks. There's, street level folks. There's whatever. Country folks. It's going to be different. It's going to
Right.
be, down south and up north, and where there's more greenery and less buildings, and where there's more buildings and less. We all have different experiences. Um, I I think it's important to just for us to remain with on the topic of belonging, that we really uh, get to know each other, and not just you and I, but in general as people. One of the best interviews I've ever seen, and they've it's almost a series of interviews, is when Colin, oh, what's his name? He took over late night for Jay Leno real quickly, and then he didn't stay, but he has still a late night show. Oh, Colin. Oh, he's an Ivy League dude. Oh, I can't think of his name.
It's not Conan O'Brien, right?
Conan, not Colin. Conan O'Brien. Yes, thank you very much. Conan O'Brien and Marshawn Lynch.
Oh
If you've
yes.
ever seen their interviews, are the best interviews I mean, top hands down. Marshawn Lynch speaks in what would be termed the most broken English or Ebonics or whatever you want to say, and yet he's so intelligent. And if you can are able to listen to what is being said and allow him to define how he's speaking, and that's what Conan does. Um, and to hear him and Conan go back and forth, and Conan's got the nasally Ivy League stature, just speaking however he speaks, and the two of them go back and forth, and Conan gets to ask him about his hood pass and
Mhm.
his it is a beautiful way of both people accepting that's the way you are, that's who you are. At the essence, though, there's a real connection there. And that
Agreed.
is sort of the belonging example, as you defined it earlier, that I would say meets that real example.
So the names that we call each other affectionately also, it's not limited to curse words. I mean, so there's a couple that some people find controversial as well. if I say that dog,
Mhm.
it's not a low life form. No, dog. That means, hey, I respect you. I love you. You are right here in my heart. Man's best friend. You, my dog. Right? That means we're close. I'm loyal to you. You are loyal to me. When we are connecting, like dog. You tell me something that's heartbreaking for you, I'm gonna be like, dog.
Mhm.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. What can I do? And however we articulate that. Um, and this one kind of gets loaded. Sometimes people get upset about dog because they think I'm looking down. I'm demeaning somebody. But
Mhm.
I only call my boys, and that's another one we're going to talk about in a minute. I only call people that are close to me dog.
Mhm.
It's just it means I don't call everybody dog.
Right. That's my dog.
Yeah, that's my dog. I'm like, and
Mm.
for somebody to, after they've explained it to you and it's a sign of affection, dog. It's been a while. It's been a while. My former pastor at my church, when we would have some heart to hearts, we'd meet each other and like dog, dog, and let's go. And we that meant, hey, I love you, I accept you, let's talk. All pretense aside, no class, no other barriers between us. This is all heart to heart. This is real. Did you ever call your people dog?
Oh yeah, all the time. That's my dog. I didn't even pronounce the whole G correctly because I got that lazy Southern drawl. But yeah,
I'm sorry.
that's my dog.
I'm sorry. I'm all
That was
proper up
our
here in the north.
that was our
Dog.
main way in high school of identifying who was with us and who wasn't. That's my dog right there. That's my dog right there. So yeah, and I remember at one point, Minister Farrakhan had an issue with, in the context of his story of how black men were calling each other dog and whatnot, and and I understood that from the context of the social and unequitable platform and the way people have been raised and historically and all of that. And my friends and I would talk about that. We understood in that context. We still called each other dog. Like
Right.
that was a comfortable sound, right? Because at the end of the day, words are sounds. That's why when other people speak a different language, it just comes out as sounds when we mimic them and don't know the language.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sound. If you don't put some meaning to it, it's a sound.
Right.
That's all it is. So the fact that we have put an acceptable and mutual meaning to that, that means we were able to communicate using these sounds.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, dog was definitely, that was the most comfortable one for us, pretty much.
It's um another one is boy. That's my boy. Now, homeboy, I don't have a whole lot of problems with, but sometimes contextually, boy, ooh,
Yeah.
sometimes I get the cringe on it. I get the cringe.
Yeah.
Historically, we know black men were called boy, and it was an unequal power structure. So
Hmm.
white people could call a grown man boy. I sometimes I cringe whenever I hear boy, especially
Right.
coming from a white man.
I
I'm
would
like,
I would imagine.
mm, I don't know that I know you like that. We don't get down like that. That's not cool for in terms of the language exchange. Now, you got to be really close to me, and we've had to have gone through some absolute hell for you to call me boy. And even I understand it might be that's my boy in terms of context. Like
Right.
we're close. We're like two peas in a pod, but still, I cringe factor.
And I think having the respect for that, that does have a historical context as well. I mean, it's a term my friends and I would use amongst ourselves, and that's one of the examples that of ways that I had to learn, especially like through my college age times, is when I would meet different groups of Black folks, I had to learn they don't know me yet. Like I kind of knew it, but I didn't really know it because I'm so used to being who I am and
Right,
used to being so comfortable around Black folks. That doesn't mean they're comfortable around me when the new person first meets me,
right, right,
right?
right.
Like that being said, I also know how to be humble enough to recognize when I'm making a mistake or talk through something. And I can identify it sometimes when I come in, like how I must appear to them, which also creates a level of dissipation. Because I mean, Nellie's dad was on, like deep in the center of where what we would deem all of the news reporting violence or gang related this or drug dealing that or whatnot. That shit took place on that block and on that street. And I would come over there and by far reaching streets and blocks be the only white person in this area. And so I remember having to kind of earn the respect by allowing everybody to feel comfortable being themselves and acknowledging that I know how I look in this situation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The um the other question that I've had is, by you feeling comfortable at some point or another, you being authentic and everybody else being authentic, did you feel like you recognize that there were places you couldn't go?
Well, I would say a little differently. And let me just also add, my friends would also vouch for me,
Right.
which helped out a lot, right? Um, there was places I no, I will never say I felt like I couldn't go. I
Let
was
me amend that one just for a second. In terms of
Yeah.
conversation, language you couldn't use, ergo places you couldn't go, like don't go there, in terms of words that you shouldn't use because and things like that.
Oh, words that hell
Yeah.
yeah,
All right. Thanks.
absolutely.
Please elaborate.
Boy would be one of those, right? Like
Right.
I'd have to be you have to I have to earn the level of comfort before I can even start to joan and make fun of folks the same way, right? Like you have to slow walk into that situation.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
in in college, it was different too
Mhm.
because a lot of the Black folks I met in college were less connected to the streets than I was,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? Like I can remember having a party that my mom should have never found out about, but that's okay. That's another story.
Can't wait.
It was it was the best party in St. Louis U history, and I'm putting that down as far as for the Black Student Alliance anyway. But Topher and I passed out flyers. We had a beautiful party. My mom was out of town. Uh, Guys came over who went to SLU with us. I was acting comfortable around my friends, and I made them probably. I remember some of the looks from them, like, "Wow, he can just feel this comfortable." And I was like, I don't want to even create that sort of feeling. So that was one thing I remember about it. I also remember one of my closest friends now who grew up in Ladue, which was a wealthier area, um, and had a different vernacular than I did. Black guy came over to me when the party got later. Nellie's cousins and some of the other folks from the inner city came, and who weren't in college, and it started to change the energy of the room. Demetrius was like, JD, um, it's starting to get that kind of roughness to us. If you want me to stay here to help put them out, like, I'll do that. I was like, D, they're here to put you out. Those are my friends. He was like, what? So I had to explain to him, they've been here many of times. This is your first time here. So, that's how you got to get to know people, though. You got to sometimes go through some misunderstandings to get through the understandings.
Mm.
But we all belong. Like, D is still one of our closest friends. Me bringing him around, though, me being the white guy, bringing the guy that speaks the certain way, that's from this kind of setting around, sometimes made him probably not meld as quickly as maybe he would have had Mike brought him around. Even though Mike and him became so close, everybody started to love D Denim as the time went on. Yeah,
Mm.
it took some getting used to.
Absolutely.
How the hell is he sitting in our seat? And this was black amongst black. What the fuck? How did he sit in the middle of the couch? Why he ain't in one of them plastic chairs back there? This is what I'm talking about.
Oh, I got you. I got you. Oh man, JD, our hour is almost up, man.
It is.
Can you believe it?
I I can. We've covered some really good topics and information today. A little
Oh,
less storytelling, but it's still a getting to know you experience. And I think this is valuable for us to do from time to time. And
oh yeah, we chopped it up
I've,
well.
yeah, I've enjoyed this one.
Oh man. So we've got future topics because I got to hear about this party.
Yes,
I've got to hear about this party. We're going to talk about more language soon.
without a doubt.
There's homework as well. George Carlin from you, Bernie Mac from me. So, folks, load up, pay attention. If you want to take notes, go right ahead. And if you got questions, where should they send them, JD?
Same difference broadcast at gmail.com. Same difference broadcast at gmail.com.
And our website is what? I'm getting old and I forget things.
Same difference.life. Check it out. We will be expanding and expounding upon it soon.
Absolutely. We'd love to hear from you, right?
Without a doubt.
And more than anything, we thank you for showing up.
Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your journey. And we hope that it continues to be valuable for you. It's valuable for us as we're getting to know each other. It's going to become more and more valuable for us as you get involved in this process. This is not our thing and your thing as listeners. This is an our thing that you're included upon and belonging to and welcome to join.
Oh, the very deft callback by the good doctor. Thank you again. And JD, send him out, man. Send him out.
This has been Same Difference with your co host. I'm JD Mass, and my good friend, Kory May. Thank you for joining us. See you next time. Thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of Same Difference. We hope this journey through unique connections and diverse perspectives has left you with fresh insights and a broader understanding of the world we share.
We're humbled by your support and enthusiasm for the incredible stories and discussions we've shared. And remember, our mission is to foster critical thinking, embrace new perspectives, and spark conversations that bring us closer to an equitable world.
So, if you've enjoyed our podcast, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us. Your feedback means the world to us, and it helps us reach even more listeners.
And if you have a story to share or a topic you'd like us to explore, don't hesitate to get in touch. We're always looking for new voices and fresh perspectives to feature on Same Difference.
Until next time, remember that our shared humanity is our most powerful asset, and by working together, we can bring about positive change.
Stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep making a difference. Thank you for being a part of Same Difference.
Take care, everyone. See you in the next episode.